Welcome to Vermont Film Essentials.
I'm Lincoln L. Hayes.
I'm David Metzger.
And with us is our fantastic guest, Rachel Riendeau, who will be seen this time. Look, here she is.
For now.
Thank you for joining us for our 30th episode.
Yay!
We did it.
Holy cow.
And that's it.
We're out.
Show's over.
Hope you guys enjoyed the Halloween special last week, as well as Night of the Living Dead. Both were a lot of fun. And thank you again for being on the Halloween special.
Oh, my pleasure. It was super fun.
It was very, very enjoyable. This week, we are talking about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, based on the novel of the same name, starring Jack Nicholson. My first viewing of this film was very late, as with most important films for me, it seems.
Truth.
I want to say in like the late 2000s. I think I saw it on Netflix, yeah. Mostly because a theater company that we were working with in New York City was doing a stage version of it. And I was like, oh, I should watch the movie. And that was my first time ever seeing it. What about you guys?
Oh, I saw it very young. Yeah, I don't know, probably when it was appropriate for me to see it. Maybe when I was 12 or 13, I think. Young, and I reread the book in high school as well. So, but I had seen it before I read the book. It was a good movie, and my parents like to show us good movies.
1997, so my friend Eric and I, that was the year that the AFI list came out.
Okay.
So my friend Eric and I, we took that summer and we decided we wanted to watch every film on that list. And we started with Cuckoo's Nest because it had been on our radar for a long time because our parents talked about it, and we just see it somewhere, like we'd see a scene somewhere, we'd see the poster. And I remember we just sat there, we were watching it, and we were laughing, we were loving Jack Nicholson, and then all of a sudden, like, it was just dead silence between us, and it was over. We watched the credits, and I think it was a good 5 minutes before one of us were just like, well, that was excellent. And it's probably the first adult movie that I saw that I had that type of reaction to.
Yeah.
And then just from there, it was like that started. I can trace it and say that my love affair with 70s films started with this film. And there was just the raw documentary-like feeling of those scenes just didn't seem scripted.
Yeah.
And I just loved it, loved it, loved it. And Jack Nicholson was just, as a symbol to us, as like the ultimate rebel, the ultimate devil that you can't help but love.
Yeah.
Did you read the book?
I didn't read the book still, and then when I learned about how Ken Kesey, he didn't sign off on this movie, and then had some like really like harsh, terrible words about it. I think from like right there, I was just like, all right, I don't want to spoil this movie, and I don't want to read the book and have it change.
Yeah. From what I understand, it's basically apples to oranges.
Yeah, it's very different. The book is definitely, just simple changes of that. Chief narrates it. It's told from his perspective. And then it's a lot more social commentary. It's a lot more about Nurse Ratched, representing like this very strict, rigid system. And then McMurphy is kind of like, it was all about like society at the time in the 60s and the 70s and government and communism and all that stuff. And so it's a bit more symbolic in that it's about like society. And then there's a couple other changes, some more things happen. It's definitely different told from Chief's perspective. Like the feel of the book is very, very different from the movie. And it's definitely not as like a heartfelt character-based journey. Like it's very different. It's still a great book. It's very educational. It's very powerful, but in a completely different way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely is. It's very different.
Speaking of, the time and like the social revolution and all that stuff, I had read that they actually had difficulty casting Nurse Ratched because there was such a women's lib movement at the time that nobody really wanted to play such a stuffy, rigid part like that. That they were casting it for a very long time. Actually, Louise Fletcher auditioned for like 6 months to get this role, and every time that she did, Milos Forman was like, "You're not bringing the right thing to the character." But then he just kept continuing to call her back. She was actually cast like a week before they started filming.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, she is Nurse Ratched. Like when we saw the production in New York, the character, our friend Amy Lee, plays Nurse Ratched, and I mean, she looks like Louise Fletcher, kind of.
She does very
like
similar,
she played
yes.
it so well. But I mean, you have just the mold that she creates in the film.
Right.
You don't need to veer away from that too much.
Yeah,
And you actually saw it in London too.
I did. The guy who played Chief was a white man. And Christian Slater played R.P. McMurphy, and so was Jack Nicholson.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't great production. I don't think it translates very well into a play, but that's just my thought.
I feel like Louise Fletcher as Nurse Ratched, and the fact that it is a woman and a nurse is actually one of the film's greatest virtues, is because, and I don't look at it as it's a comment on, you know, the female being evil or anything like that.
I think it has
Like,
nothing to do with
no,
being
no,
female. I honestly don't.
No.
Yeah.
And I think like while the social commentary isn't as overt as it probably is in the book,
Yeah, she's a little different in the book. She's still awful, but
that it's still there. And even the fact that Milos Forman is this Czech director that immigrated over to America, and he's taking this American story, but he looks at it and he says, I get this oppression. And it's all there. Like the fact that she's one of my favorite villains
yeah.
because she does not think she's a villain.
Right.
No.
At all.
Which is the epitome of a great villain.
Yeah.
Right.
You have your superhero stories, and you know those villains are huge and elaborate and all that. But if you're a good true villain, you think you're right, and Batman is wrong. Where Nurse Ratched thinks this is what's right for these patients. This is what they need. I'm doing the right thing, and then it goes too far.
And she's just like the condescending kindness of just, no, you're gonna do this, and this is how it's gonna be.
Yeah.
And it's so perfect. And there's nothing he can do about it.
No.
Right, exactly.
He can be wild all he wants. He can rebel all he wants.
Yep.
He can do all these crazy antics all he wants. But
Yep.
at the end of the day, there's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes that's a great example of that, and just rewatching it last night, is when they're in the meeting and he's talking about watching the World Series. And they like vote again, like Ted was like, let's vote again. And so they vote again, and he's like, great, like we all voted, it's awesome. And she's like, oh, well, actually, the rest of the ward needs to vote. And it's like, whoa, oh my God, like that is manipulative, but like she planned that the whole time. Like she knew that she's gonna win this no matter what.
Right.
And then for him to get Chief to put his hand up and then her be like, oh, the meeting is over. Like she's always one step ahead because she's planned this. Maybe she's dealt with a patient like him in the past, but like exactly like you said, like nothing he does, she doesn't let him win because she knows he can't win. Like she knows that she has this power over him the whole time, and it's not that she's smarter than him, she's smarter in a different way, I guess. Like she's just smart. She's just very smart.
Yeah.
And it's just that she's in charge. This is her ward, and like there's nothing that's gonna change that.
She'll always have a reason for whatever anyone wants to not give it to them.
Sure.
Because she can.
This movie is so full of so many great moments. Like there's that moment, and then the moment immediately after when he goes and he pretends that he's watching the World Series,
yeah,
and I mean it's so
great.
And I've come to realize as I get older that the scene when he tries to lift the, and then immediately at the end when the Chief does it.
Yeah.
Like that is such a perfect metaphor for life.
Yeah.
In that you're trying to lift this heavy weight, you can't do it. You're trying, like hell, you're trying. Everyone is watching you. Everyone is seeing you fail. But at least I tried.
Yeah.
Damn it. And then at
Such
the
a good
end,
line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a good line.
That's a really good line.
Because here are all these guys who have put upon themselves this impotence, these problems, whatever's going on. They're all voluntary, except for him. And that revelation, when he realizes that, it's such a big moment.
Oh, it's another good moment.
And it's just
too.
like, wait, what? Why? Why are you all in here?
Because they're cogs in the machine.
And they have their own reasons.
Yeah.
Harding's is one of the best because he's the least insane. He's just insecure. But it's driven him to the point where he can't function anymore. So he needs to be away from people, and he needs to be isolated and controlled, and he needs to have everything done for him so that then he can be at the top. But then McMurphy comes in and he's above him. So their power struggle is really interesting as well. My favorite moment between the two of them is when they're playing basketball. And he tells him to get off the court because Harding's like, all right, we're going to play. What?
Right.
Why do I have to leave? That's not fair.
Or when they're doing the fishing trip and he's introducing everybody and everyone's a
He
doctor.
calls him Mister. The look he gives him is just like, you son of a bitch.
I love that.
Speaking of great lines, but when they're doing, when he discovers that they're all voluntary, one of my favorite lines is that when he says, "You're no more crazier than the average a-hole that's out walking the street."
Right.
It's just so good. And this. I apologize. This was Roger Ebert, not me. But I read his review, and he liked it. He just wasn't in love with it.
Sure.
And he pointed to the scene, the fishing scene. He says it's a great scene. You look at the scene by itself. It's funny. It makes you feel good.
It's heartfelt.
But that it breaks the claustrophobic
It
theme
does.
and tone of the film.
It does.
And Milos didn't want to do it.
Right.
He didn't want to shoot that scene.
Because
He
it's
wanted
in
to
the
keep
book,
it all.
I think. I'm pretty sure it's in the book.
He wanted to keep everything in the ward for
Yeah.
the same reason.
And somehow, like, I didn't. The ending was still just as powerful to me
Right.
as ever.
Yeah.
But he said that just think of how better it would be if that scene wasn't there, because they're
Right.
not, you don't have that sense of being outside on the ocean, like, and
Right. And like
being free.
Yeah, and like the scene where they have like the party and the girls come in and all of that, and like the windows open and he falls asleep and he ends up not escaping.
Right.
It's that choice that he decides kind of not to run away, to like stay and like continue to spend the night and hang out with these guys.
Yeah, he's bonded with them.
That I guess would give it a little bit more power if they hadn't already like escaped, basically. Like it would give it that he, hadn't been outside in a long time. I do like the fishing scene, but that's a good point. That's interesting.
Speaking of, that fishing scene makes me incredibly nervous. When he's like, all right, we're going to go in the cabin and have sex. And then all of the guys like clamor around the front. I'm like, you're all going to fall in the ocean. You're all going to fall in the ocean. You're going to die. And then Cheswick abandons the stern and the boat just...
Can't steer the boat, Danny DeVito.
Oh, man.
I love when he's playing cards with them, and little Danny DeVito is just there, and he's just hit me, and he's so good at like the absolute frustration that he cannot communicate, and he can't get the thing turned up or turned down.
He keeps saying hotel when they're playing Monopoly. I love that. He's so annoying.
They build that scene so well. You don't even really notice that the music is getting louder. Then pretty soon you're just like, man, this music's really loud. I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's so well structured. Everything fits. And the scene when they're in the pool and he's talking to the orderly and he's like, I only got 68 days and then I'm out of here. And he's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
This isn't jail.
Right.
You're in here until we let you out. And then that dime drops and he's just like, oh, wait, my plan isn't going to work then.
Yeah. Because he thinks he can do whatever he wants.
I just feign crazy. I
it.
get out of the work program, spend a few weeks in the nut house, and then I'm out. That's great. And knowing that is the conclusion going into the movie, it's just so tragic because you're just like, oh,
yeah,
sweet baby angel, no, you're not going to make it.
What you said something earlier, one of the connections that's kind of similar in the book is that, like, so you were saying that all these men don't really fit in society, and that's why they're in this mental institution. So a lot of the book is like, there's these men who don't fit into the cogs of the machine of everyday society, so they go into here to like learn kind of how to be cogs. And it kind of, what I think the movie translates a little bit differently is that McMurphy comes in and kind of is like, no, it's okay for you to be like this. Like, it's okay to be a virgin. It's okay to like have this weird insecurity. It's okay to not play any sort of game correctly. It's like, it's okay. Like, you can be yourself, especially when he finds out like they're volunteering. He's like, that's when, you know, saying like, you guys are all so crazy just like everybody else.
Right.
And that is kind of something I think translates really well and then makes it even more heartfelt in the film, is that like he shows them that like they can be comfortable with being who they are, even if they are deemed crazy or they don't fit in or whatever it is.
Right.
They're still, you know, they're okay. They don't have to feel ashamed. And Nurse Ratched is very good at making them feel ashamed,
right.
like how she bullies Billy and everybody else. Like it, she makes them feel ashamed of who they are, and that's what she does to R.P. McMurphy. She takes it away, like who he is, away from him.
Yeah. Speaking of Nurse Ratched, Louise Fletcher was a little frustrated during the production of the film because all the men got to hang out and have fun, and she had to be, you know, Nurse Ratched all the time. So there's a story that one day she just showed up in her underwear on set, just to be like, I can have fun. See, look, I can have fun. And they're all like, all right, I guess. But that was like her moment of defiance. To be like, I want to have some fun on this movie too, because I don't have any fun on this movie.
It's gonna be hard to play like the villain, like the only villain in the thing. Like everybody hates you.
An absolute villain too. Like
even though her staff hates her, even her staff hates her. Oh, that's funny.
Poor woman. This movie was actually the second of only 3 films to actually win Best Picture, Best Actor, Actress, Director, and Screenplay. The other 2 were It Happened One Night and Silence of the Lambs.
Yep.
That's pretty great.
That's pretty great. Well, they're, I mean, well deserved. They're all great. This is one of my favorite Jack Nicholson roles, as I'm sure it's like one of everyone's, but like.
Because they didn't let him too far off the chain. Like, he's doing enough Jack Nicholson stuff that you're like, this is fun, but he's not like Witches of Eastwick or Batman, or where you're just like,
which are still fun.
They're fun, but they're just like, maybe let's take it down to a 10, because you're like 16 at this point.
And there is just such, like, he just created a persona. And it starts with, so Easy Rider, and then you get 5 Easy Pieces, and then you get The Last Detail, and then Chinatown, and then this, and it's like this ultimate, like, gradual, like, here is Jack Nicholson, and here I am. And it's not even like, he's not, like, I don't think of him as R.P. McMurphy, I just think of him as Jack, this is Jack Nicholson. And it's funny because you see these movies now, and you know, like, I like Witches of Eastwick and Batman. They're great. And that's how I knew Jack Nicholson when I was a kid and before I see these movies. But then it was so weird, like, knowing who Jack Nicholson is, knowing the persona, just through osmosis, basically. And then you see Easy Rider and you're like, oh my God, it's all right there. It's all there. And he doesn't, you know, yes, he's a little bit more doing character work and not just, you know, showing up and being like, I'm Jack Nicholson. But it's still like that rambunctious, rebellious, devil-may-care energy is all right there. And you just, and you love it and you soak it up.
And you love it. You love it. You want to
no
hang
matter
out with
he
it.
does such, like, so he says such horrible things in this. He obviously, like, the character before he comes here, like, whatever he did to get himself in jail was horrible
he
stuff.
Did a horrible thing and then tried to rationalize it. Like,
but the whole
disgusting.
time you love him.
Right, exactly. Like, he's a disgusting human being, but I don't know. Yeah, it's a Jack Nicholson thing. Like, there's something about him that, like, you just still love him.
It's that devilish charm.
Yeah, it is.
Just a few things about Milos Forman, the director, because he is just the way that he creates films and he creates an atmosphere and creates an energy. You know, this is the guy who would move on and do Amadeus, which I love.
Which I love, which Tom Hulce is also in, and amazing.
People versus Larry Flint, which for my money is like Woody Harrelson's best performance.
Yeah.
I need to see that.
But before this, he's in Czech and he's making these. He made 2 films, Loves of a Blonde and The Fireman's Ball, which you know, are these great little films that have all these great little moments in them. And he was so big, like the cast always talks about how they'd be doing a scene and he'd be the one in the back being like, no, it's not natural. You're not being natural, be more natural. And he just wanted to get them all together and just be real. And you get that when you watch the movie.
Yeah.
You so get that.
You really do.
I read that a lot of the like crowd shots, if you will, are just him rolling camera and not telling the actors. So they're just interacting with each other. And a lot of them stayed in character throughout most of the shoot.
It's probably easier. I mean, as an actor, I would think it would be easier when you're playing a character like
so big,
that.
yeah. Danny DeVito and Sidney Lassick, who played Cheswick, both kind of had little breaks making this movie. DeVito created an imaginary friend that he would talk with at night because he missed his wife at the time, Rhea Perlman. Wow. So much so that he went to the doctor of the hospital, is an actual psychiatric doctor who runs that facility in Oregon. His name is Dean R. Brooks. So we went to him and he's like, am I in trouble? Should I be worried about this? He's like, no, you're fine. As long as you can,
Separate
keep the two apart. And then Lassick had like a really big emotional breakdown watching the final scene with Chief and McMurphy, so much so they had to like be taken off of set and calm down. And they asked if they should be concerned about it. And Brooks was like, no, we have medicine if he needs it. We are a psychiatric
The
hospital.
70s.
It's powerful stuff, man, this story. And that's what I love. Like they found an actual hospital that they shoot in.
Right.
And everything, like as a director, you want to create like you want to create the environment as real as possible so that it's that much easier for your players to play.
Right. Yeah, it's better as an actor to actually like be in a psych ward and like, oh, this is or like a haunted house or whatever it is. Yeah, it feels
you feel the
different.
energy of the place. And that's why you hear stories of people like shooting in an old orphanage or a psychiatric hospital, shooting The Shining, and you're just like, this is really creepy.
Yeah.
I don't like being in this room. Can we not be in this room? I would like to leave this room, please.
The one big chunk, like the whole sequence where it's so intense because they have the argument and that's when he's, I want my cigarettes, I want my cigarettes.
Yeah.
So that whole blow up is crazy intense.
Yeah.
And it really, like you when you watch it and you watch how it was shot and you learn what they did beforehand to prepare for it and the way they moved the camera. It's uncomfortable, and it's just, that's how you make a sequence be as intense and as uncomfortable and as powerful as possible. But then, then there's the moment where they go upstairs and Chief and McMurphy have the talk, and it's the revelation that he can talk, and the juicy fruit, and then that is immediately followed by the shock treatment.
Yeah.
And it's that's why I fell in love with 70s cinema, because it's so matter of fact, just set up the camera and just watch it. Like, we're not gonna do any crazy tricks. Like, this seemed like it was like a guiding post when I saw it for like, these are the types of films, and that it felt attainable. Like, it wasn't like watching Apocalypse Now and being like, all right, well, I quit.
I'm never going to go to Vietnam.
It's like you watch this and you're like, okay, there's a way you can do this.
I can find a hallway. I can shoot in a hallway. I can do this.
Those are my favorite movies too, when you can watch like like a play. You can watch two actors do a scene and they're in it and they're feeling it out and they're just playing the whole scene instead of doing like a line or two here and there, because then you have to change the camera angle and whatnot. I like that you can see the whole thing unravel, and like you can see Jack Nicholson take his time and really like make a decision in that scene where he's like, did he I'm gonna give him another piece of gum, and then have him like have his reaction, which is just so funny that he's just cracking up and being like, I can't, what? Like, he doesn't even say anything to him for a couple seconds because he's just so like surprised and then like respectful of it. Like, wow, I cannot believe you're doing this. This is amazing. Like,
and the scenes where it doesn't feel like, you feel like it's not scripted and you feel like he's just making stuff up and he's just saying stuff. Like when before they do the shock treatment and they're rubbing the ointment on him and he's like, a little dabble will do you, and you feel like oh, he just he just threw that in there. I know it.
Yeah.
And it makes you laugh. But then they do the actual thing, and that camera is just dead on him,
It's so
and then
horrible.
the zoom right in on that happening, and it's like the director is saying, like, nope, you're not escaping
Can't
this.
look away.
Right. You're in
just
this with
watch.
him.
We don't cut to reactions of any of the nurses or technicians. It's
No,
just
it's-
what's
yeah.
happening right now. And I love how funny he is in that scene, because you know it's just nervous tension. You know it's just fear of,
I also think
don't
he
do
doesn't
this.
know what's going to happen.
I don't think he does either.
Right.
I
But
think that makes it
you can
even
tell
worse.
that Jack Nicholson is uncomfortable
Right.
in that scene, because there's so much going on and there's so many things, and the dollop will do you. That's just him trying to break out of the tension. And I don't like what's about to happen. I've read the script and I don't want this to happen, and I don't want to do it, but it's going to, and it is what it is. And it's his small moments like that, or like when he's teaching him how to play basketball and all that other stuff that he does throughout. And one of the reasons that I love the character so much is that he never really judges the men for what's wrong, like
Right.
their outward problems.
Right.
And it's not really until he finds out that they're all voluntary that he even has an opinion about it.
Yeah.
Like, Billy has the stutter. He never really comments on the stutter. Martini is whatever's going on with Martini, and he never really comments on that except when he annoys him playing the game.
Right.
And it's not even that, your mental illness is a nuisance. It's stop being an idiot.
Right.
Listen to the words I'm saying. You can't do that. Stop it. Stop.
If you break it,
Yeah.
This is a dime. This isn't 2 nickels. It's nothing.
No, that's why it's great, because I think, yeah, it goes back to him. Why he's so different is he accepts them for who they are, and he knows that there is something wrong with everybody. Like, everybody's screwed up, so
Yeah.
he's not going to pity these guys. He's going to treat them as equals. He's not going to pity them or baby them or shame them like everybody else is in this hospital, like Nurse Ratched is. And it's killing these men, basically. And he's like, I don't know why we're all acting like this. Like, we can still have fun. Like, it's just, we're in a mental ward, but like, we can still live. We can
Yeah.
still be alive. And
Right.
that's like what,
And that's
in
what
the
she
movie
takes
he
away.
represents, is like, he is life. Like, RPM, that's his initials, is on purpose. It's written that way in the book, that he is just speed and like energy and life. And that's why the ending is just the worst, because his entire being is taken away from him. That's why what Chief does is the best for him.
All my notes are trivia, so I'll just throw them in periodically. Dean R. Brooks, who I mentioned before, was an actual psychiatrist and worked at the facility. He actually diagnosed William Redfield, who plays Harding, with leukemia. Like, he was like, you might have leukemia. And then William Redford died 18 months later from leukemia. So he's very, very ill making this film, which is very tragic. This was also shown in Swedish cinemas from 1975 until 1987. It had a theatrical run for that long, which is still a record.
they liked it.
I guess so.
I think they liked it.
So is that the doctor that plays the actual doctor in the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like the opening scene when he's talking to McMurphy. There's a great moment where McMurphy, like, I think there's a fly.
Oh,
and
yeah,
McMurphy
and he-
hits
yeah.
the fly, and like he's talking to him, and he's just like, yeah. And like that's just a thing that Jack Nicholson did
Well, I feel
to
like he
make it
did
that
it, yeah.
more, like, no, be in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part, even watching it again last night, I'm always like, oh, Jack Nicholson did that on purpose. Like, he did that on purpose.
This poor guy had to learn lines for the first time ever. He's like, okay, I guess I'm in this movie now. And then he's face to face with Jack Nicholson, and I'm gonna distract you. Please don't do that.
But it's just,
This
yeah,
is
his
hard
reaction is so like, what do I do? Okay. It kind of works, though.
I'll keep going, I guess. The book, at least, is based on the author's experience working at a VA hospital, where the social commentary definitely can be found. And Kirk Douglas owned the rights to the film after reading the book. And then by the time, it took forever to get the movie made. By the time it actually was to be made, he was too old to play McMurphy. And I think Michael Douglas was going to play it for a while, and then they ended up going with Jack Nicholson. which is very interesting.
It's
I
weird.
didn't realize that there was such a legal battle with
Yeah.
this. It's kind of crazy.
And it's weird to think of Michael Douglas, like he basically just wanted to be a producer and got jobs acting because he's the son of Kirk Douglas. He obviously did it,
Right.
but it wasn't his true passion. But then he has this huge career
It
after
makes
It's
it
just
that.
great. Yeah. Louise Fletcher also couldn't watch the film for years after because it was just too hard for her to watch, which is understandable. I mean, that is a pretty rough role that you're playing there.
The ending is so, I mean, it's just a movie that makes you fall in love with these characters, and you're laughing with them. There's a lot of comedy in this movie.
Absolutely.
And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden it's just like
Taken away.
It
Taken
hits
away.
you hard.
It's
and that's
just
why,
cut out of your brain.
and I love that this film was like my gateway drug to 70s cinema and
Yeah.
movies that I love, because there's lots of things that I love about movies, but one of my favorite is that film can show a person think like nothing else. And there's the ultimate one is in this movie, and at the end when they're in the when they're having the party, there's I think I timed it once, and it was like 1 minute and 13 seconds, and it's just Jack Nicholson sitting there thinking. He doesn't say a word. It's just him. It's a big close-up of him, and he's just looking around, and you just see him think. And there's like a long pause where he's just like looking like dead set, and then he does the smile and he turns. But the whole time you're just like, I don't know what he's thinking about. I want to know what he's thinking about.
What is he doing?
And then you realize whatever you want to put on that look is what you can put on that look. But then there's no way that the director says like, this is what he's thinking, have at it.
Yeah.
Here's what you should think.
That's just the actor's
it's
process
just there.
happening. Yeah.
It's so good.
It's so absolutely tragic what happens to Billy. And you have to think that obviously McMurphy feels guilty for it because he brought the girls in, but his reaction to Ratchet is justified, right?
Well-
a little bit.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that whole scene, like what you said about how you just watch something unfold
Yeah.
without cuts and without, like, the whole time
The
when Billy
chaos of
comes
that.
out and, like, you know, he's happy because of what happened.
Right.
And then when he says, like, I'm not ashamed.
Right.
And that he doesn't stutter.
Right.
And then she just keeps going and says, you know, I don't know how your mother's going to react to this.
Yep.
And then you see him just
Lose it.
dissolve, and
Right.
it's so like it's heartbreaking. And then you see McMurphy's reaction to it, and then the revelation of what Billy does after that. And yes, like at that moment, like I don't care. Like you want her strangled
Yeah.
Right.
to death.
Right.
You
That
just do.
scene looks real.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's stage combat and they're doing it very safely and she's in control. But man, you
I don't
watch
know.
that.
I question it. I don't know if she is.
When he's got her down on the ground, she looks a little bit like Schwarzenegger when he comes out of the thing in Total Recall on Mars and he's in the atmosphere and his eyes are bugging out and you're just like,
Is this safe?
are we okay?
I mean, I hope that it was.
Jack, are you good?
And he feels like he is. I mean, I know he's an amazing actor and everything, but yeah, it feels like he's
Yeah.
really strangling.
And it's, I mean, I don't ever feel bad for Nurse Ratched, but for a long time watching this movie, like the first few times I saw it, I was like, oh, she's doing this all on purpose. But what you said and watching it as I got older, I'm like, no, she's not. She really thinks like she's helping, but she also wants to maintain her power.
Right.
And she sees, McMurphy as like a threat to her power. So when she sees that Billy's not stuttering anymore and he slept with a girl in his room and like, it's like, okay, I'm losing this battle. I have to take these guys down a peg because that's where they're safe.
And she knows how to do it with Billy
And she definitely knows how to do it with Billy.
by bringing
and,
up Mom.
and that's the hardest thing is that it's like, no, you push them too far. You're shaming them so far that they slit their throats. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
And it is her fault. And like, I wonder if like maybe that if he hadn't like grabbed her and like strangled her, if there would have been a moment in like an alternate universe or whatever, if like she would have, I guess, like on her face and stuff like that, she kind of sees it and seems like she's surprised when she walks in the room, but it's very quick. But yeah, that it's just kind of an interesting revelation to kind of realize, like, oh wow, she's not doing any of this on purpose. But how did you not see that coming? Like, you push people too far, and they break. Especially someone like that, like Billy, like that character of Billy.
She's also, I read that part of like even her costuming and her wardrobe and everything suggests that she's stuck in another time. Like,
her cap is older, isn't it?
Well, and her hair is so
yeah.
big and so high that it's clearly like this is an older hairstyle. This isn't contemporary. She's not keeping up with the times. This is how she did it when, you know, she first started, and she hasn't changed or she hasn't grown. And I think there's some commentary in that, you know, we can't stick with the same procedures. We can't use the same methods. They have to grow and, you know, move on. And watching it now, especially, just to see and to think about the treatment of people with mental illness. Even today, it's not great, but 40 years ago in the 70s, oof. Before that, I mean, it just makes you really reflect.
They were shocking people.
Because they thought it helped.
They were giving people lobotomies, which literally just basically kills somebody.
Yeah.
It doesn't kill them, but like it takes that person out of that body, and then it's just a body.
Yeah.
That's it's so awful.
It also a couple things. So the first, like there's a couple things where, like in 70s films, even if it's a period piece, like this film is supposed to be, it feels like the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just how they were just rolling around in the muck of their time, and like whether they were making a movie about the Depression or a movie about Watergate, like they just feel the same.
Yeah, they all feel the same.
But there's a great Jack Nicholson story that I don't know if it's in your notes or not, but
I don't think so.
when he gets the shock treatment and then he comes down and he pretends to be lobotomized. He joins the group, and Nurse Ratched is there and asks if he likes to join the group, and he sits down and he says yes, and I'll be quiet and I'll listen, and I'll be a nice little boy. And he says, "Thank you, Mildred." And he doesn't say Nurse Ratched, he says Mildred. And you see, like, he just did that. It wasn't scripted. It was just him being him, and he says it, and you see the look on her face, and she's like, just.
How do you know my name?
Right.
And actually, that reaction shot, was Fletcher reacting to something Forman was saying to her. He was giving her direction, and she just was like, and that's the take they ended up using as the reaction shot. But she was actually responding to some direction that she got that she didn't want or didn't like or something. And that's how you make a movie that feels this real. You use those takes. You use that footage that the actors don't know is happening, so they're reacting for real. And it's probably between takes, and he's like, "All right, keep rolling, but in this one, do it better." And she's just like, "Fine." And then that ends up being the Ratched reaction in the scene, and it works perfectly.
Since you two are sitting here, how do you, like, what do you, like, are you able to, like, when you create a performance and a director does that, is there a part of you that feels like, ugh, like I didn't know that was going to be in the movie, or is it like, oh, I see why you did that and I can get behind it, or does it feel like a betrayal?
I'd be mad about it.
I don't know that I would remember. I mean,
I'd be able to tell.
You think so?
Because usually when directors, I haven't had a role that I need to be like, that I haven't been like fully immersed in, that's like recently anyway, but if a director's talking to me, if we're rolling, like I would look at you and be more me.
Right.
And I don't think I'd be mad because I don't think my reaction would have been in character or committed in the right way, or like, I would listen to the director and I guess I would kind of be okay with it if it was like, my reaction to something the actor did in the scene, like Jack Nicholson calling her Mildred or whatever. If they use that reaction, obviously perfect. But yeah, I'd be kind of like, really? You didn't do the one that like I took your direction and, acted it?
So good. I didn't do that with either of you, so you don't have to hate
Are
me.
you trying to tell us something,
No.
David?
No,
I
but
Revelation.
Curious because
I wouldn't be a fan. I mean, I've had stuff where I'm surprised at the takes that they use, or they use like
That I
Yeah,
have had. I don't
but-
know that I would be that upset if, or that I would even be able to tell, because
I'd
I
be
mean
able to
she's pretty much looking into the barrel on that one anyway, because she's looking right at McMurphy. So I don't know, watching it, if I'd be like, that wasn't in the scene. I think that was other footage. Unless it was like really obvious and like, you know, I'm picturing like on a break and they got footage of me doing something out of character and then use it for that. I'd be like, what is that? That wasn't even in the movie. What are you talking about?
Right.
But I feel like if the camera's rolling, you kind of have to be aware of it all the time. You also have to be careful as an actor because, you know, your face can betray you at any time. Case in point, there she was reacting to the director honestly as a person, like F you, and then that ended up being what they used in the movie, so it worked out okay.
Right.
But if you're, you know, picture Video Village being like way far away, and he says something and you're just like, and you mutter something, well, you're mic'd up.
Right.
You have to be careful.
Yeah, I guess in my head, like when a director's talking to me, we're rolling. Obviously, the camera can still be rolling, but
Sure.
like that's not going to be considered something to use. I guess like that's to me like a pause without cutting, being like, hey, actually, okay, quick, can we like do it this way, whatever? And it's like, okay, I'm absorbing it. We're having a conversation. Boom, back into the scene. So I guess that like that trust is kind of like, but we were talking and I wasn't. I was just
I can
listening.
see that, but
that's what I'm
here's
thinking.
Here's an alternate scenario for you. You're doing a scene. They call a hold, so you're just there, and then something falls, and you react to it, and your reaction is like, "Oh," and then they use that reaction.
That would be ridiculous.
For something that you're startled for. I'm just saying.
That would be weird.
I don't think it would bother me that much. Also, as an editor, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to use that because I have it.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, we can have different opinions, obviously.
No.
We're never
Can we?
speaking again.
Oh,
But
here we go.
no, that's interesting. But I do love, you know, naturalistic filmmaking. I do, like I was saying, I love watching it. I love being in it. So I guess it would make sense sometimes to use stuff outside of it. It's just like when a director is talking, I guess. But other than that, like if it was, you know, a pause in the scene and we're resetting and like something natural happened, or the way he was setting all of this up where like he was filming these big group scenes and just letting them go, obviously all of that is fair game.
Right.
And I feel like there are certain moments that you find that you haven't been directed to do if you're, you know, two characters talking to each other, and then you find like this like great reaction or great moment. And I feel like there's a lot of that in this movie, and this is one of, I've always loved movies with characters, and this is one of my favorite movies with these very distinct, amazing characters. I've loved it just as like a person, like an audience member, but then also like as an actor, because these are the fun, like juicy roles to play, and
Right.
all these actors are so brilliant, and they've all encompassed these characters with all these little intricacies and craziness. And like, I mean, Girl Interrupted is a very similar film and story in a lot of ways, and I love that movie too because they're like these big characters, and not, I just like movies in insane asylums, but it's the same with like Gone with the Wind and like other movies like we've talked about and stuff like that. Like I love character-based movies because I feel like there's a lot of heart to them. Like that's why I love fantasy movies. They're all character-driven.
Yeah.
Harry Potter's character-driven. Lord of the Rings is character-driven.
Yeah.
And you fall in love with these characters and you become friends with them and you like go on this journey with them. And that's why it's heartbreaking when Billy kills himself. That's why it's heartbreaking what happens to McMurphy is
Right.
that you end up being like in this with them, and then their hero is basically taken away. But luckily, like many fantasy stories and other stories, that like him being taken away doesn't mean that they can't keep going. Like he's
Right.
inspired them to keep going.
Yeah.
And I like that there's a debate. Like there's, at least when I am watching it with someone who hasn't seen it before, there's always that moment where the chief puts the pillow on McMurphy's head and he's like, oh my God, he's gonna kill him, and it's like, And for me,
This
like,
is
there's
immersive.
never a moment where I was watching it and being like, well, you know, that's messed up.
Yeah.
There was always a moment of just being like, I get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's harsh, but I get it.
I
Yeah.
hadn't seen it in a minute, and I had forgotten why he's given the lobotomy. And then, I mean, it's just this, then this, then this, and the end. Like there's never a missed moment in this entire story because, you know, Billy's found out with the girl. She shames him. She's like, "You're gonna go over here." He kills himself. Pandemonium. He blames her. He tries to choke her because he's just in a rage. They haul him away. Next time we see him, he's been lobotomized. It's just like, holy shit.
Right.
Pardon me. And then to see Chief and see his reaction, he was his hero. I mean, would they have that great scene where he says, "You're bigger than me."
Right.
He's
Yeah.
like, "What are you talking about? You're the size of a tree
Yeah,
trunk."
exactly.
And he's like, I feel big as a mountain now. Let's go. Let's do it. And then he's not there.
Right.
And he knows he's not there. So why let him suffer in a body not as himself anymore?
Yeah, because they got each other, and he
Yeah.
knew that McMurphy wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
He knew that that wasn't him, and that's what he says. He's like, that's, you know, he's like, it's not you. Like, it's not, yeah, he just knows that that's not how he'd want to live.
Yeah.
The ending is as emotional as anything, and you know, the first couple times I saw it, like you break at different spots, but the one thing that always kills me is the hug that he gives him. Like, I can't, you know, I can take I'm used to the fact that Billy kills himself.
Yeah.
I'm used to the fact that he gets lobotomized, and him tearing the thing up and throwing it out the window and running out. But just that hug just kills me.
It's so human and heartbreaking, and like, it's his goodbye to him. And I remember when I saw this, I was at an age where like I hadn't read it yet, and I remember asking, I think I asked my mom, but I asked one of my parents, like, well, what happened to him? Because they don't explain it, and that's kind of
No.
the beauty of it.
You
And-
have to know what it is to know
right,
what it is.
and my mom explained to me what a lobotomy was and that they had done it like back in the day, and I was just like, that is a terrible thing. And then when we read the book, we talked even more about like mental institutions at the time and lobotomies and how that was like one of their resolves.
Treatments, yeah.
But yeah, I remember when she told me, I was like, oh my God, like that makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Like it was terrible. And it's just awful. I hate that Nurse Ratched wins. But she doesn't. But she does. But she doesn't.
She does, because then there's no more R.P. McMurphy. Like, he's gone.
Right.
So she won.
But Chief gets out.
right.
And all of them have
And they
now
see
like
that.
learned that like
What do
She
we
shouldn't
think
win.
happens after Chief leaves? Does anybody else be like, you know what, I think I'm going to go?
Christopher Lloyd wakes everybody up because he's yelling and screaming,
Yeah.
and they all
I think
run
in
out
the
that window.
book they all kind of start to leave. Not while he's still there. Like a couple of them, like Harding obviously in the movie leaves and comes back, right? It's his character that leaves and comes back.
You're thinking of 28 Days, I think.
No,
Sandra
no,
Bullock
I'm
movie.
thinking
No?
of the book. No. That's what?
That's preposterous.
I
The
think
guy
in the
leaves,
book,
and then he comes back because he
there's-
fell off the wagon.
Yes, that does happen, but I'm pretty sure in the book, like a couple of them like start to like they're like, I'm gonna go. If I recall correctly, I don't think they come back. I think it's like other characters, not aside from if I haven't read it in a very long time.
I don't know. I haven't read it.
I know. We know.
As we mentioned before we started filming, and we just mentioned Christopher Lloyd, this was his film debut. And he's incredible.
Yeah.
Seeing him and Danny DeVito playing straight characters is so interesting.
And the rest of their careers are so funny.
Yeah.
It's just so great.
Before Taxi.
Yeah. And then they go
Yeah,
on to Taxi, and he
on
plays
Taxi.
that incredibly strange role, and DeVito's, larger than life, tiny man. Everybody is so great in this. But before we go, I do want to mention one thing. There is a spoof of this in the second season of the British show Spaced. The character of Daisy is a writer, and she can't get any work, so she takes a job at a restaurant. And they spoof the institution from Cuckoo's Nest, where they're all in there and they all seem like they're trapped, and there's a guy with a stutter, and there's the big guy who's playing Chief, and then there's a revelation that they're all writers. And he's like, oh yeah, I have a novel, oh, I have a screenplay. And instead of the faucet pulling out, it's a giant trash can that Daisy can't lift because it's too heavy full of food scraps. But I think I saw that right around the time that I saw the movie, and it was just like, this is the most genius parody I have ever seen. So I encourage you to seek that out if you enjoy this film, because it's spot on. I mean, it's Edgar Wright.
Right.
So you know that it's going to be
And
intelligent parody.
They do it in Always Sunny, too.
Yeah,
Do
they
they?
do. Yeah, I like that. I love that episode.
Fitting.
There's
That's
a,
very
Danny DeVito
good. It's-
reprised his role on Broadway, too.
Yep.
Or off Broadway, I forget. But he reprised Martini
Yes.
on stage.
there's a great bonding moment between my mom and I.
Hi, Maureen.
Because I watched movies before, but there was never like a moment where like it's like it was an action movie or it was a
Sure.
monster movie.
You're
or,
all both in the same room while it's happening,
Right.
kind of
Right.
situation.
But after I watched this movie and I just watched it with my friend and we're driving somewhere and I couldn't help it and I was just like, it's an awesome movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it was as if she like stopped the car and was just like, yes, it is. It is an amazing movie. It is an important movie, David, and it's great that you watched it. I can't believe. So then
I could just hear the
I knew
tires
that I'm
skidding.
like,
Yes. This is an important moment in our lives together.
Yeah, that's why my parents showed me the movie. It was one of their favorite movies, and it was like an important movie and a good movie, and yeah, I mean it is.
And your mom working in healthcare, I'm sure that it resonated incredibly with her.
No, definitely, and she just loved the character of Nurse Ratched. Like Louise Fletcher is just so good, and she's like, it's an amazing performance, and it is, for sure.
I like to think that like between like 73 to like 77 or 78 was probably at least the stories that I can glean from my mom and dad is that like that was like their time when they went to go see movies together.
Yeah, same.
And I feel like this was a movie that they went to see and they were just both like, this is great.
Super into it.
Yeah.
I have a quick trivia.
Oh.
I believe I think it's true. I remember reading an interview with Louise Fletcher because she won an Oscar.
Yeah.
And she had trouble in the rest of her career because everyone saw her as Nurse Ratched.
Getting out of it, yeah.
And it's the same as Scarlett O'Hara and like really like any Vivian Leigh always being Scarlett O'Hara kind of thing. Like there are all these actresses that play these iconic roles, and then no one ever gave them another shot to be something different because they're like, oh, audiences will only see you as Nurse Ratched, so you can't play like this role or that role, or like you can't play this ingenue, or you can't like she had to wait. I think her career picked up a little bit more and played like moms and wives and stuff, but like it just I remember reading an interview with her and she was like, yeah, it kind of made and ruined my career all at the same time because no one saw me as anything else, which is just a bummer that some producers and directors see it that way, that like that's the point of an actor, you play different parts. Like,
let me be a character.
Jack Nicholson can play similar characters his entire career and be super successful, but women can't because everybody hates us.
Patriarchy.
The reason why Ken Kesey basically disowns this movie and doesn't like this movie. So when they decided to make the movie, they couldn't get Ken Kesey to sign off on it, so they discovered this loophole where they can base the movie and the screenplay on the play and not the book. And again, this is Ken Kesey saying this, not me. But someone asked him, are you going to see the movie? And his reply was, if a couple of Hell's Angels was raping your family, would you go out and watch? And it's like, geez, man, like you.
Damn.
He really is not happy about it.
But why didn't he like it?
I don't know.
Because they changed so much.
They weren't telling that much.
But they weren't telling his story. Imagine if you wrote a story.
I guess so, yeah.
And
It was a
David
very
took
personal
it
story.
and changed it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, that's not my story.
But he signed off on the play, so I don't know
And
why.
the play is basically the same.
Right.
That's my confusion too, because I know he signed off on the play, and the play is pretty much identical.
Yeah.
I mean,
aside from Chief narrates the play.
Unless he thought that, like,
Does he?
Because films are so popular, people are going to think that the movie is
Word
the
for word.
real.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's just, I think he's just an intense, crazy dude.
Yes,
I also
think
read
so.
that he swore he would never see the movie. And then years and years later, he was in a hotel room just flipping through the channels, and he landed on something, and he's like, oh, this is interesting. And he ended up watching it for a few minutes, and it turned out to be Cuckoo's Nest, and he quickly changed the channel. Because he's like, nope, not going to watch it.
It's too bad.
It is.
I wonder if he has seen it. Is
I
he
don't
still
know.
alive?
I don't.
I didn't.
think so.
I
I have
didn't
no
look that up.
idea.
One last piece of trivia that I just thought was silly. Lasik, who I mentioned, who plays Cheswick, showed up to his audition wearing a rope for a belt. And they're like, that's how he got the part. You look like a crazy person.
Like I'm the same person.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I'm tickled pink that this is our 30th episode. I'm tickled pink that you are here and you decided to talk about this movie because it's a great movie.
And
it's
you're
still a great
on
movie.
camera. And if we're not, it's going to be. Gonna be.
Hell of a-
Good. Thank you very much for coming in. This
No
was very fun.
problem. I live with you.
It's true. Next week is Casablanca.
Casablanca.
That's
I'm
a good one.
excited. When was the last time I saw Casablanca? Man, maybe college.
Guys, is it Casablanca or Casablanca? Are you going to
I
talk
say-
about this?
Tomato, tomato. I say Casablanca.
Yeah.
But it's also playing at Palace 9.
Yes,
as
Fathom
the
event.
Fathom event.
So you should go see it. Oh man,
Great movie.
ooh, we might need to go see that. That on the big screen would be great. That last shot, blow your mind. Cool. All right. Thanks, Rachel Riendeau, for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rachel.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
David, for picking this. And for look at this spread.
Look at-
We didn't even talk about that.
All right.
Is this the Criterion Collection?
What a great
No,
box
but
set.
it's so it's the Blu-ray box set. So look at this. There's playing cards in here.
Oh my God, that's
What?
adorable.
There's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest playing cards.
Wow.
There's all of these production stills and the different posters from different regions where it played.
That's crazy.
This little booklet that has all the newspaper clippings of reviews. And there's an excellent in-depth documentary on the Blu-ray that
Wow.
basically goes over all the production and
Great.
how they did it.
This is gorgeous. Look at this. They ate there, played games there, even showered there. They lived together. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, that's one way to make a movie. That's one way to make a great movie.
Yeah.
Immersive. Great. All right. So until next week with Casablanca, I've been Lincoln L. Hayes.
I'm David Metzger.
And I'm Rachel Riendeau.
See you next time.
Bye.